Hi, this is Alec Terrazas, and for my film/book presentation, I'll go ahead and do the book The Good Earth by Pearl S. Buck. We will be comparing the movie and the film for stereotypes and different representations seen in each. So, the author of the book is Pearl S. Buck, otherwise known by her Chinese name, Sai Zhenju. She lived in China for many years between the years of 1892 through 1934. She based The Good Earth, which is one part of a trilogy, on the Suzhou city in the Anhui province of China. The book went on to win a Pulitzer Prize in 1932 for fiction, as well as it helped her to win the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1938. The book is noted for having a fair representation of Chinese men and women, representing them as they are, which is in a manner that's not exotic or mystic. So, in The Good Earth, we have several different characters. The characters' names that you see on screen in blue are ones that appeared specifically in the book. The ones in white are ones that appeared in both the book and the movie. So, for starters, we have Wang Lung, which is the main character, the main person whose point of view is kind of seen throughout the book. Next, we have Olan, which is Wang Lung's wife. Then there's Wang's father, there's Wang's uncle, there's Wang's children, as well as Lotus Flower and Pearl Blossom, Qing, and Cuckoo. For the most part, the book and the film do contain a lot of similarities. There's not too much of a diversion from one or the other. In fact, for about 2/3 of either, we see basically the same things. So essentially, what happens is that Wang Lung marries Olan. Olan gives birth to two sons and one daughter. Then a severe famine strikes. A second daughter is killed by Olan to spare her from the hardships faced during the famine. They move south, barely avoiding death as a last resort to get out of the area without having to sell their land to survive. They're able to get down to a city in the south and survive there by either manual labor or begging until there is an overthrow of the government by the communist forces, which are coming into the area around this time. And in the chaos, Wang Lung is able to steal some gold coins, and Olan is able to find a bag of jewels, and together they return to the north. More land is bought by Wang, who has become wealthy as a result of these gold coins and jewels. Wang begins to change as he grows more wealthy, deviating from his more natural personality into one of a person of status. Wang gets more rich and distant from his family and gets a second wife, much to the dismay of his father as well as Olan. And this is where the differences come into play between the book and the film. Up until this point, the plot has essentially been the same between the two. In the film, a locust plague strikes. The family must come together to kind of fight against the locusts, and it reunites them after some different types of family drama had occurred previously in the film. Wang Long realizes his fault, reconciles with Olan just before Olan dies, and that's the end for the film. In the book, it's a bit more dark. Wang continues to drift from his values, but recognizes that he is doing so. As Olan dies, Wang adopts a third wife. He continues to grow older. There continues to be more family drama and infighting. Until ultimately Wang is nearing his death, and against his wishes, the sons, as it is implied in the ending, decide to sell the land, thus finally separating the good earth from the family in the story. Reviews for the book and the film were positive across the board. The book became a bestseller between 1931 and 1932. The film was also received with positive reviews. A lot of the reviews for the film expressed that for the time, the visuals seen, as well as things like prop design and some of the acting, are quite good, and a lot of praise also goes towards the film being more true to the book. One interesting thing in regards to the film reviews in particular is the fact that a lot of them don't take into account the things that we'll be discussing when it comes to the stereotypes and the problems that the film did have. So first, when it comes to the stereotypes and representations, we'll take a look at the film first. MGM was responsible for the handling of this particular film. So one of the first controversies is the lack of representation when it comes to casting. Anna May Wong, a very popular at the time Asian American actress, was told she could not play Olan, and the excuse was given that the studio was following the anti-miscegenation laws at the time, and she was instead offered the role of Lotus, which is a prostitute slash kind of a dancer or sing-song girl. Anna May Wong denied playing the role because it was a role which sexualized her as an Asian American woman, and also was one that made her seem more exotic or mystified, which was a big thing at the time. The fact that it needed over 20 rewrites to achieve a least offensive version, I think, speaks a lot to the nature of that industry at that time. When it came to Pearl S. Buck giving word on some of the choices, as well as the film's producer, Irving Thalberg, both of them advocated and asked for an all Chinese or Chinese American cast. However, MGM kind of came out and said, well, American audiences aren't quite ready for that yet. So yeah, for this simple reason that the studio executives or people at MGM didn't think that the American audiences were ready for that, just for that reason, they went with a primarily white cast. So now we get into the main fault in the movie, and this is the yellow face portrayals of virtually all the main characters. They have makeup on in many of these scenes to make them appear as Chinese. To me, it is a pretty sad fact that they would rather have all this effort to appear Chinese when they could have easily just had a Chinese cast or a Chinese American cast. It is the most ironic thing that you have a book which is centered about these Chinese characters and Chinese culture and a lot of historical elements from China, and then you have the film come out and it's Caucasian actors playing Chinese people. When it comes to advertising as well, these Chinese or Asian American characters were not advertised at all. The TV trailers and posters did not include them. The trailers and posters and advertising specifically only included the white Caucasian actors. So next we'll move on to the book and look at some of the representations seen there, and why it's given some praise as well as some things that it does wrong. So the portrayal of the Chinese culture and way of life is mostly accurate for the time, since Pearl S. Buck spent a lot of her youth growing up over in China, well into her college days when she wrote The Good Earth. A lot of the times the portrayals are real and they're grim and grisly, and things that people who were going through famines or going through poverty would face, not just in China, but around the world. But the one thing that it does not is portray every character as being sexualized or being exotic or having these mystical powers or things that were seen in a lot of media at the time. It also avoids the tendencies of yellow peril. The book is often credited with opening the eyes of the American audiences to the reality of the Chinese culture, giving them a much needed glimpse into another human culture. So some of the problematic and potentially problematic areas, though there aren't very many in the book, some have pointed out there are phrases which kind of encourage a racial hierarchy or separation of race type phrasing. In addition, some people have noted that this does portray only one aspect of Chinese culture at the time, that being those who were farmers in the north that did encounter things like poverty. This doesn't necessarily reflect things like technological or industrial advancements or large city culture in China around this time. Some have called criticism to Pearl S. Buck, stating that although she lived in China, she was not herself Chinese and did not experience life or culture in the same way. Things are brought up that they had a nanny that lived with them that would help take care of Pearl when she was younger, so she didn't have to experience some of the hardships. And of course, her family was well off, so they lived a fairly good life in China. And here are some references.